I truly don't know a single person who's attained any level of success that says that's how it's gone for them. Because the reality is that the growth comes through struggle. And that's where you learn. The biggest lessons, the biggest development comes on the tail end of a challenge. We don't learn because everything's going great. We learn because we're faced with a struggle that forces us to grow.
Welcome to the Richer Soul Podcast, where we share how to live in harmony across health, wealth, time, relationships, and spirituality. How do you bring them all together to live your ultimate life? The best thing is, we've got nothing to sell, just great advice from people who've succeeded and lived that dream. Welcome to Richer Soul, Dan Brault. It's great to have you join us today.
Glad to be here.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Money was not really something we talked about growing up. I knew my dad made decent money, but he never wanted to talk about it. He was always pretty frugal. My mom was much more open about it, but they didn't really teach me anything about it. I was fortunate enough that in high school, my high school offered some business classes. So we actually did learn about finances and credit and all these things that a lot of people don't have the privilege of. And that really got me started on the business track and really grateful for that.
Out of curiosity, what did they teach you in school about business?
So it was interesting. They use like computer simulations, and it was, you basically play games, but it was, you have your own business and you have to learn how to run the different departments and figure out what you want to sell and how you're going to sell it. And you have to make hiring decisions. And so there was that component of it, and there were competitions. And but we also talked about what personal finances looked like and what credit looked like and how credit cards work and how to balance a checkbook and like some of the basic fundamentals that most people, even after they graduate college, they have no idea how to do, and they start making money and don't know what to do with it.
I've always been shocked by that. It wasn't until much later in life that I realized that people didn't understand money and that they never talked about it as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough to have that education in high school. I know a lot of people don't have that, but that definitely got me on a good track where I knew how to handle money. I had somewhat of a system. I didn't, go and max out all my credit cards or sign up for 1 million credit cards as soon as I got on a college campus. But yeah, it's something that's sorely needed all throughout the US right now.
Yeah, it hasn't become the norm. There are isolated places where it's done. I don't know that it's done well, though, wherever it is done. It sounds like whatever program you went through is better than the norm.
It was great. I mean, the fact that there was, they gamified it and, you got to learn while having fun, made it very attractive. And a lot of those lessons have stuck with me.
Cool. Now, your dad had a business.
Yep. He's had many.
He had many, but he also had one with Tony Robbins.
He did. I have a picture of Tony Robbins holding me up when I was like 2 years old.
Were you in like the palm of his hand? He's so like
in one hand. Yeah. When I was, a toddler, my dad owned a Tony Robbins franchise, which, that's not a thing anymore. So he had this territory up here in upstate New York, and he would put on the seminars and the workshops and do the coaching and all that stuff using those principles. And that, I mean, when I say I grew up in the coaching world, I mean it. I grew up in the coaching world. And you had met my uncle a few weeks back. He was the global chairman of EO for a while, and he's still heavily involved in that. And my dad does executive coaching now, so I was born into it. I've lived that world my whole life, pretty much.
And yet they didn't talk about money.
Oddly enough.
It's funny because if you're going to run a business, that's like the one thing you kind of need to know.
Yeah. No, I learned a lot of structure and discipline and taking action and goal setting and personal development, but not the money side.
Why do you think most people don't take action?
I think the alternative is that they have really convenient and easy options not to. And our world is set up to have them be pretty lazy and just go along with whatever they're being sold. And things like social media, it's literally designed to keep you scrolling. It's to have, to keep your attention. Everything's in 3-second clips or 1-second clips, and it's, constant dopamine hits. And it's so much easier to do that because it's immediately rewarding. And so it's sort of hijacking your brain, and ultimately they are making the choices for you. They are choosing how you spend your time instead of you making intentional choices yourself.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot worse. I mean, I grew up before the phones, but now this whole generation grew up with them, and
Yeah.
it's instant hit. We used to have, I think, 4 or 5 TV channels, not
Right.
and it went offline at a certain time, and you didn't have that much pulling at you like we do today. It was just a different world. When did you start coaching?
Legitimately, when I was 12 or 13 years old.
What were you doing at 12 or 13?
At that point, it was mostly like fitness and health stuff. So I again grew up in the environment. We had a gym in our basement. My dad was, he wrestled in high school and college, and he had done martial arts pretty much his whole life and lifted weights. So we had a wrestling mat and a gym in our basement. And so it was just around. So I started doing that, started training with him, started reading books, learning about nutrition and program design and all these things. And so I really started that before a lot of my peers. And then people just started asking. And it wasn't like, this formal coaching arrangement, but yeah, I started coaching my friends and family members on nutrition and exercise and all these things before I really knew what coaching was.
Out of curiosity, just because Hormozy came from the world of fitness,
Yeah.
what do you think of all his stuff? He makes a lot of noise in the marketplace.
I think he's a phenomenal marketer. I mean, that's sort of what he does. He's really good at creating different marketing plans and different, sales pipelines. Really good at that. Obviously, really good at getting eyeballs. I've read a few of his books. I think there's a lot of useful information in there for specific types of businesses, especially those that are consumer facing. I think some of that stuff, like we had talked about, maybe not as applicable in business to business, but if you have that type of a business and that's a need you have where you need to fill that pipeline, you're not really getting what you need there, it can be a great way to figure out how to structure your offers and get more out of the people that are already coming in the door.
That makes sense. Does he have, beyond marketing, is there substance?
I mean, I haven't looked to him for other stuff.
Okay.
I think it's sort of like how a little kid sees a professional athlete and they admire this person and they idolize them. And then suddenly they think, well, they're really good at this thing. I admire them here. So let me listen to everything they have to say. It's like, no,
Yeah.
they're just really good at sports. It doesn't mean they're great at everything, but they have this platform and a camera and a microphone stuck in their face. So they share their opinions and everyone has one. Take everything with a grain of salt, even stuff that we're saying here. Because a lot of opinions and ideas can be good, but there doesn't mean it's good for everyone. So, you take it and say, hey, does this apply to me? Do I believe this? Does this apply to my situation? Could it be useful? And if yes, great. If not, that's fine too. I mean, I think one of the things that Alex does really well is he just gives. He just gives a lot of value. He tries to help. And I'm sure he's helping a ton of people in the process. And maybe there's also a ton of people that aren't getting value from what he's doing, but he's trying. And he's given a lot of value and he's putting it all out there and he's making it accessible. I know a lot of his books, even the most recent one, all you had to do was pay for shipping to get it. There was no cost of the book outside of that. So he's doing his best to give a lot of value. And I know he's getting a lot of value in return.
Cool. You started getting sales training relatively early, didn't you?
Yeah. My formal, I mean, I would say some of the best sales training out there, even still today, is the Sandler sales method. I was fortunate enough that I learned that in college. I did a financial services internship and they taught the Sandler sales methodology, and I still use that today. I think, it's a lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth, or they think very negatively about sales because they there are all these movies that came out in the 90s and early 2000s about like, always be closing. You got to close hard, got to close often. It's like this pushy, overly, manipulative person who's just trying to get a sale no matter what. And like, yeah, that's a terrible way to sell. And like, nobody wants that. And those things don't work anymore. But when you can sell well, it doesn't feel like sales. And so when you can have a really good conversation with somebody and match their issues to something you have to offer, and they don't feel sold, they just feel like a problem is being solved, like that's what good sales feels like. And it's not like you have to convince them or come up with the perfect words to say to get them to buy or do something or get them to do something they wouldn't normally want to do. It's honestly probably understanding them at a deeper level than anyone else has taken the time to do. And then evaluating if it's a fit on both sides. And you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. And it's leading that process, being a guide for them, truly working to understand what issues they're facing and if you can help them or not.
And I think that's a big part of it. Sales has gotten a bad rap over the years, but the reality is everyone's a salesperson. You want to date, you're a salesperson. You want your kid to do something, you're a salesperson.
That's
you
right.
want a promotion, you're a salesperson. And I think that's the one thing most business owners don't realize is you're always in sales when you run a business, because that's what you just have to be doing. You have to be promoting and get out there and do that. And if you don't, then no one understands what you have to offer and they're not going to buy it. Even if you can help them tremendously, you still have to convey that message. And I think it's a lot harder than it seems.
Yeah, I agree. You're always selling something, whether it's continuing to have to sell your employees on some new direction or initiative or project or task, or just continuing to sell them on yourself and your vision and the direction of the company. It's always, it's sales and leadership and coaching. They're all cousins. There's so many similarities between them. And it's an essential skill because ultimately what it comes down to is communication. How well can you communicate? How well can you listen? How well can you understand someone else and discover their needs and find a potential match? And that's the same with an employee. Hey, they have this need to, they need money, but they also need to feel valued and exercise their skills and strengths and feel like they're contributing towards something. And you have a vision that you want to proceed with and get help with. And you want to make money from the business too. And can we do this together successfully? And that is a sale just like anything else.
That it is. And I think when people realize that, it kind of shifts their focus away from the used car sales guy that nobody wants to talk to. And I get that. It's not easy.
Yeah. Because the bad salespeople typically stand out more in your mind because you're like, oh, that person was so pushy. They were aggressive. They were annoying. Like they were really trying to persuade me. It just felt bad. And that is much more memorable than a smooth, easy conversation where someone just met your needs and it just felt easy. And that's actually a good salesperson. And it's not necessarily supposed to be super memorable that they were a salesperson, because when they're doing a good job, it doesn't feel salesy. They just feel like they're helping you. It just feels like they're listening. It just feels like a good conversation. So you don't really associate them with sales like you would a used car salesman. So, and I think that's how it should be. When someone is really good at sales, like you don't feel like they're a salesperson.
And I think that's the key, is doing it the correct way. And at the end of the day, it's being out to be helpful and wanting to help that person achieve their goals. And also knowing to say, you know what, I can't help you, but maybe so-and-so can. And that's okay too. And I think that also brings a certain amount of value as well.
Absolutely. Well, because then it aligns, because if you're forcing a sale, especially with someone that doesn't fit what you do, and if there's an ongoing relationship, that customer is going to be a pain in the butt for you because they don't want what you have, or you don't align with them, or they don't align with you. And so you're going to have to then like adjust what you naturally do. You're going to have to come up with new products or new services or a new way of helping them that is so outside of what you normally do. And now you're reinventing the wheel for every single person that comes in the door. And that's just a really poor way to do business.
I'm with you. So it sounds like you, in a sense, had an idyllic upbringing. You enjoyed what your parents taught you. Has it been the perfect journey?
Oh man. I think we all have our struggles. I mean, I started my entrepreneurial career seriously on, going off on my own and about 10 years ago. And gosh, I wish it was this perfect smooth sail upward to success. But I truly don't know a single person who's attained any level of success that says that's how it's gone for them. Because the reality is that the growth comes through struggle. And that's where you learn the biggest lessons. The biggest development comes on the tail end of a challenge. And we don't learn because everything's going great. We learn because we're faced with a struggle that forces us to grow, or we're going to keep facing that same challenge until we figure it out, until we grow into the person that can handle that and grow past it and get through it. So, I mean, no, there was a period about 7 years ago where, I looking back, I'm like, yeah, of course those were mistakes. Of course I shouldn't have done that. But at the time, didn't know that. And yeah, I mean, I started a business with a guy who was super skilled in one area, but I sort of let that blind me. I didn't really pay attention to some red flags that I saw because I was so focused on these things that he did really well. And, I that structurally wasn't good from the start because of those things. And, we ended up taking on these big projects that required this big machinery and big jobs and big crews and all these things. And, I was mismanaging the business because I really abdicated a few roles. And I don't want to say I trusted too much, but I overlooked things that I shouldn't have overlooked. And I was sort of hoping for the best because I was sort of on a roll at that point. And things were going really well. I was like, all right, if I'm doing well here, let's take it up to that next level. And I stepped into a world I didn't know as well. I was going from renovating houses and renting them and doing that to like, hey, let's do new builds, let's do construction, and with a partner I'd never worked with before. And bought all this big machinery. And the partner I had, he was running the crews, he was bidding the jobs, he was doing all that, and I was sort of the business side. And come to find out, he's not at all the person I thought he was. Massive turnover with the crews, jobs never occurring when and how he said they were going to. He was basically running the jobs and the crews into the ground. Ton of things going on that shouldn't have happened. And we ended up running out of money in the middle of building someone's lake house. And, there was a lot of legal threats thrown around. Thankfully, it didn't end in a lawsuit, but I did end up having to, voluntarily surrender all this machinery. And, there was an 8,000 draw that I never got paid out on. And I had to pay all these attorney bills and all this. I had to pay out of pocket for all the materials that were ordered that were never paid for. Simultaneously, I was doing this big redevelopment project, overestimated how much it could sell for, underestimated how much it would cost to do. All in all, between those two projects, I lost over $800,000. I mean, I was at the point where, if thankfully one of the loans were with a family member and they were kind enough to let me pay it off over time. But if I didn't have that, I would have had to declare bankruptcy because I didn't have $800,000 in cash just sitting around. And, that was incredibly stressful. I mean, I was at the point where I was selling tables and chairs and lamps and stuff out of my house just to try to have cash, just to have anything. I sold all my rentals. I, liquidated my 401k. I got rid of everything I possibly could because of that debt. So, has it all been smooth sailing? No, certainly hasn't. And I learned some important lessons from that. And sometimes those lessons take a while to learn. Sometimes you have to relearn them. Sometimes the lesson continues to show up in one way or another, until you really make the changes necessary. And I think that'll always happen. There's always a next level to grow to personally, because your business will never exceed who you are as a person. So, challenges will always come up. I don't think there's ever a point where anyone's like, oh yeah, life's perfect, never run into any challenges, haven't had any challenge in years. Like, it just doesn't exist.
We'll talk about the comment about growing and evolving. What I've noticed is, including myself, we tend to ignore red flags, especially if we're maybe enamored or we have trust and we think something's going to happen. Do you know why that is? Like, why do we do that? Why don't we like go, wait, something seems like we wait too long?
Yeah. In my experience, from my perspective, what I see is I get so excited about something, and I just like, I have this clear vision for how well it's going to go and the life I'll have after this thing, and all the, it's so amazing. And, I tend to be very future looking, more optimistic, as a lot of entrepreneurs are. And that can be a huge asset, because you're willing to take chances, you're willing to go for it, you're willing to keep working until you get it. And that can be super valuable. That can be one of the reasons you succeed. But on the other side of that, it can also be one of the reasons that you fail and you make mistakes, because you do push for things to work and you do see, oh yeah, but if this does work, it'll be so amazing. And so, you're maybe a little bit more tolerant of risk, and, you're optimistic, and you're the type of guy who can figure it out and get it done and solve the problem. And, you're type A driven, action oriented type of person, as a lot of entrepreneurs are. And so therefore we say like, oh, well, I'll figure it out. Like I'll make this work. I'll get it done. We're used to being the person that, makes it work, that drives the business forward, that you're the engine. And so it's easy beforehand to minimize problems, because you're like, oh, I'll figure it out. I'll get it done. I'll make sure it works. And so it's easy to just think about the positive, because it's way more exciting to think about that stuff too, and to believe in yourself that you can achieve that, or overcome something, or minimize the chances of something going wrong, because that stuff's not fun to think about. And most people tend to overestimate their abilities and underestimate the likelihood of things going wrong.
I've noticed that with entrepreneurs. I am naturally somewhat cautious, and so I will always pressure test an idea to say, where can it go wrong? And sometimes people think of that as being negative.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, I'm not being negative. What I want to do is solve all the potholes so we can go around them easily.
Yep.
And if you can at least have an idea of, either you've done that before, you're like, okay, I know what those are, we can handle those. And yes, they're there, but the likelihood is small.
Mm-hmm.
Or this is what the downside's going to be. We have this upside, this downside. It's realistic. Then it becomes easy to say yes. I don't know Warren Buffett's exact quote, but he takes very few swings, and he likes slow pitches in small ballparks where the fence isn't very far away or very high. Like, make it easy for me to succeed. And I think people struggle not to do, like, just to sit and wait and go, not good enough. And because I think part of it is fear of missing out.
Mm-hmm.
The marketers all deal of a lifetime. Every 38 seconds, there's a deal of a lifetime.
Yeah.
That's what you have to learn, right? And so figuring out that balance and doing it. But then there's the other part, which you mentioned and which I have noticed. We abdicate responsibility. So we turn things over to people and we expect them to do it. And what I have found, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong, most people aren't always going to do what they say they're going to do. So it's to trust but verify. Create the systems and the process to say, hey, this is what you need to do, but have a system in place to say, did it get done, and double check that it did. And that really doesn't take very long. What I have found is the nicest talking people are the ones I probably should worry the most about. It's just, I don't know what you've seen with that.
Yeah. And going to that point of, a lot of people, they say they'll do something and then they don't. I don't think it's bad intentions. I think they intend to do it. I think a lot of things structurally are not set up for people to succeed. And they try to adopt a system that is not designed for them. So this is where understanding your own strengths and weaknesses and playing to those. And that's where, we're talking about why do entrepreneurs often so often overlook these potential red flags. Well, I think more often than not, the entrepreneur is built that way. They are so often built to be the type of person that they are the idea person. They're the big picture thinker. They're the long-term vision. And they're not the person that puts the brakes on and says, hold on, is this a good idea? And what could go wrong here? They're the person thinking, oh my gosh, this could be so amazing. We could do this and we can do that. And so it's fundamentally misaligned with their strengths. So the average entrepreneur is much more pie in the sky, big picture thinker, creative, innovative. And so they're all gas pedal all day long. They're not brakes in most cases. So gas pedal says, oh, the red flag, I don't even see it. I just drove past it. I'm past that. I'm not even thinking about it. So it's just fundamentally who they are, which is why, companies generally do well when they have more than one person because they have a variety of strengths playing simultaneously. Now you have a good team that you create a well-rounded team with specialized individuals who have their own different strengths. So, that goes to the same point that you were just mentioning, understanding strengths, understanding weaknesses. Like we can't ignore those things. And I think we're all here for a reason. We're all built certain ways for a reason. I think a lot of people, I see this all the time, they, instead of playing to those strengths and structuring things to operate how they would normally operate, they try to fix themselves and say, well, oh, I'm not disciplined, so I need to figure out a way to do that. I'm not detail oriented, so I need to fix that. Well, but the problem with that is now you're assuming that you're broken. You're assuming there's something wrong with you because you're not getting the same results as someone else. Well, no, maybe they just have different strengths than you do, but you're trying to play the same game, or you're trying to play the same position, but you have totally different strengths. Like that just structurally is set up for failure.
It could be timing. You've been in the real estate business. I've been in the real estate business. It was easy in 2011. 10 years later, if I'm trying to use the same methodology, it isn't going to work.
Yep.
And yet if the guru's saying, I did this, you're like, yeah, you did in 2011. It doesn't work anymore. So there are all of these other factors that come into play. And honestly, sometimes it's luck. You happen to be at the right place at the right time with the right message. Certain people have those certain skills that allow them to be able to do that.
Yep.
And that doesn't necessarily make them the right people to follow or the best or a good comparator for you, because it just might not be. And I mentioned Warren Buffett earlier. The way that Warren Buffett built that company, he took opportunities at a time where he kind of created those opportunities. Today, those opportunities don't exist. Like he would have, I'm not saying he couldn't be successful if he was 25 years old today. I'm saying he was not going to use the same playbook. He'd have to use a completely different playbook today, and he'd have to figure it out, which is, I don't disagree that he probably could. And I think people need to realize that. I think too often we don't think through it. We get stuck with the glamour of the moment. We don't look at the red flags, and then that's where we end up.
Yeah. I mean, you take enough swings and eventually you'll get a hit. And sometimes you have a really easy pitcher and you get a lot of hits. So I agree. I mean, looking at the sample size is essential. How big is the sample size? What are the details of it? I mean, anytime, talk with, other business owners and they're saying like, oh, well, I need more leads. It's like, all right, well, how do you know? Well, it's because sales are low. Okay. For how long? And what numbers are you referencing? Like what metrics specifically? And come to find out, it's like they've been dealing with a problem for 3 days and the sample size is way too small. And not only is leads not the problem, they have more than enough leads, but they're not getting to them quickly enough or having the right conversations. So looking at, it's really easy to embellish something and make it sound way better than it is. Like, oh, I did all these, I did this, I did that. Okay, tell me more about that. How did that compare to what other people were doing? How did you tell me why? And how does that apply to today? And in this environment, in this climate, and the more context is essential, because anything can look good in isolation, but sample size, okay, great, how long have they been doing it? How long has that issue been? How long have you been facing that? What are the actual numbers behind it? What's the benchmark that you're comparing against? It's really easy to make anything look really bad or really good in isolation, but context is key.
It is very true. Too often we get caught up, or depending on who you're dealing with, a lot of times, I don't know what the right word is to use, but they make you feel inferior. When you get that red flag, call it and move on.
Yeah.
You just have to we all have that self-doubt, and you got to overcome that. If they're pushing that self-doubt button, it's eject time.
It's great marketing.
It is. Well, that's why I asked you about Alex. He's very good at marketing.
Yep.
And that's just the reality of the world today. It's funny because Alex kind of built upon Russell Brunson.
Mm-hmm.
And I read Russell's book, Expert Secrets.
Yep.
And he had one line in there that just hit me hard and changed the way I do business. And it's not in the way you think. He said, if you market to people who take action, you eliminate 98% of your audience. And I said, you know what, Russell? I'll take the 2%. You can have the 98%. I don't want to waste my time.
Yeah.
And I was okay with that. But I did that strategically. I was like, that is the place I want to play, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And
well, if you're out there selling courses, doesn't impact you if they don't take action. They still bought. But if you're in, personal advisement, coaching, service based, where you actually have to ongoing work with people, then it really matters who you're working with and how much they take action.
Exactly. And that was kind of the key. People don't realize in the world of courses, I think the completion rate's about 3 to 5%.
I believe that.
And it was funny. I was just reading an article that talked about the reason people buy stuff. And some people buy stuff for a label.
Yep.
In other words, I bought a course on being an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. You haven't even started a business.
Yeah.
And some people want knowledge, and they're just interested in knowledge. And there were a whole bunch of reasons. It was very interesting to see the psychology behind it. In any case, we're here because you help entrepreneurs get what they want out of their business: more freedom, more clarity, more profit, more life, which is very much aligned with what we do. What kind of brought you to that space?
Like I said, I was born into coaching, literally. It's, that question that is always asked, like, if you won the lottery, you won $100 million and it was sitting in the bank, what would you do? How would you spend your time? And people say, well, I'd travel the world and I'd go hang out on the beach. It's like, okay, well, after the honeymoon phase, then what do you do? Because ultimately people want to contribute to something. They need to work on something. Otherwise, they'll just go nuts. So what always came back to me, and it was this process and I literally have it written in front of me because I never wanted to forget it, but it's learning and exploring is sort of stage one. And then coming up with ideas and innovation to then create and collaborate to grow and transform, and then share it and recruit and sell and rally others. And that whole process, I love that process, and creating transformations. And that, in any role I've ever been in any company or my own or others, I've always taken on that sort of a responsibility. After college, I moved out to California and I was working in a high-end gym, Equinox, as a personal trainer. And I had this sales experience. And so I was just outselling everybody. I literally set a record for the company for fastest ever to full-time trainer, and in this like major corporation. And all these other trainers were asking me how I did it. And It's because I actually had a sales process. And so I started training the other trainers on this sales process. And I loved that process because I was able to take things that I had learned and innovated on, and then I get to share it and collaborate with others and help them to create growth and transformation. And there have been plenty of times in my career where I've gotten away from that. I moved towards something because it sounded really good or had a good salary or whatever. But I've always found that the thing that I always go back to about what would I do if money were never an issue, it's always around coaching and creating transformations and helping people to get to that next level, to get more out of life, to get more out of their business, to show up how they really want to show up, to lean into their strengths. And, they say like, you do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Like, well, I agree with that to some degree. I think it'll be more enjoyable, but there's work. There's no avoiding hard work. There's hard work is always going to be present. There's no avoiding it. Do you want to do hard work with stuff that's going to light you up or burn you out? And if more people identified their strengths and leaned into them and made conscious efforts to have their work be more of the stuff that they love and less of the stuff they loathe. I mean, I see it with the businesses I work with. You get higher productivity, lower burnout, lower turnover, fewer communication problems, fewer people problems. People stay longer. They're more appreciative, more productive. Profits improve. Literally everything improves because now people are playing to their strengths and doing less of the stuff that frustrates them. It would be like if I took a football team and I said, well, yeah, Mr. Wide Receiver, I'm going to have you play center, and offensive tackle, you're going to go play running back, and a quarterback, you're going to be the punter. And I was totally misaligning people with their strengths. Well, you look at that and you're like, of course that team would fail. Of course they would be terrible. But so many people set up companies that way where they say, oh, well, this person, they have that experience, they have a marketing background, so therefore they should do this. It's like, well, but is that position actually playing to their strengths? Are they actually spending most of their time doing the things that they're really good at? Because when a company has consistent bottlenecks, it's often because wherever that bottleneck is, it's someone being asked to work in an area of friction, an area of weakness for themselves. So of course they're going to procrastinate. Of course it's not going to go well. They're going to have challenge with it, and they're going to spend time doing other things that they're actually good at. So that stuff, I mean, it just, for me personally, it made such a difference in my enjoyment and fulfillment and productivity and work, and doing that work with others. I see the transformation it makes, and I love it.
That's cool. One of the biggest struggles I had was understanding what my gifts were. And the reason why is I just assumed everyone else had them too. Like
Right.
For me, I grew up with understanding money. I just assumed everyone understood money and how to use it properly. I didn't realize that wasn't the case. I grew up learning how to use spreadsheets. I just assume people know how to build spreadsheets. Like, this is easy. You just do that, and there it is. And so that was kind of, for me, was seeing what really stood out. There are things like when you do a certain job, oh, I love doing this, I hate doing that. But more so on the skill level or the genius level of what is it that you do, those were kind of the things. And even to this day, I still wonder or think about it or that. And so it's just interesting to really be able to hone in and see what is it that the world values you for, because sometimes it's not so clear.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, there's all those different tools. There's, I don't know if sometimes I mix up the names of it. There's like the Ikigai.
Ikigai it's the combination of what do you love doing? What are you good at that the world wants? And this is the one everyone forgets and is willing to pay for.
Yeah.
Because if they're not willing to pay for it, you have a hobby, which is perfectly fine. Just understand it's a hobby.
Yep.
That's the one. Strength Finders shows you certain things. Myers-Briggs give you temperament. Colby gives you, are you a fast start this? None of them go, oh, you're a money master.
Right.
Or you're really good with spreadsheets. Like that's kind of, Strength Finders. There's so many out there.
Yeah.
And so I've taken a lot of them just to get those types of information,
Yeah.
but it's the other parts that don't always show up.
Yeah, so that's where like one of the things I utilize and I find super helpful is a highly detailed time study where I have people take it, and the way that it's structured, anytime, and if anyone doesn't know what a time study is basically you keeping track of everything you're doing, generally for about a week. A week is ideal, and so in detail. So if I were doing a time study right now, I would have from the time we started to the time we ended. I would list podcast, Richer Soul podcast with Rocky, from this time to this time. And then after that, I would list a few things. One, did I get any interruptions? Well, during this time while we were recording, I really hope not. Two, what was the energy result? Was it positive energy, neutral, or did I lose energy on it? That is the immediate recording. After I'm done doing that for an entire week, and it should be an average week, now I go back and record, were these activities revenue producing? Do I want to do more of it, the same amount or less of it? Was it important or not important? Was it urgent or not urgent? And what type of task was it? Was it a do, decide, delegate, or design? And there may be one other thing I'm missing, but either way, what it helps you to do is identify what type of activities are you gaining energy from? What do you want to do more of? What do you want to do less of? What's draining for you? And now you can, especially with things like AI, you can take that spreadsheet and feed it into AI and get an amazing analysis of, hey, generally these are the types of activities that you self-report give you a lot of energy. These are the types of things that tend to drain your energy. Here's some commonalities between them. Here are the things that you're doing that you say you want to do less of, or you're consistently getting interrupted around this time of the day. That's leading to this much lower productivity because they have studies showing how much the context switching takes away from your productivity, on average 23 minutes per interruption. So now I have a really good analysis of, hey, how am I spending my week? Where's my energy? And what type of things are bringing me energy and draining my energy? And now when I'm looking at, okay, what should I be doing more of or less of? And what tasks maybe do I want to automate or delegate to somebody else or something else? Now I know that the first things are generally going to be the things I want to do less of and the things that are draining my energy. You can put these all in a chart of, that I love it's the 4 quadrants of important, not important, urgent, not urgent. You can literally plot out, hey, 40% of your time is spent on unimportant and urgent things. Like, maybe that's something worth looking into. Seems like you're probably constantly getting pulled around where other people are dictating your time. Probably not great if you're looking to be super productive during the day. So these, an analysis like that goes a really long way in helping you to hone in on, what do you do that brings you energy? What do you do that drains your energy? And then analyzing it to the next level of, how do I do more of that stuff and less of the stuff that drains me? And something that you can continue to do. You can do it multiple times a year if you're constantly, trying to upgrade, or if you're at a point where you're starting to feel burnt out. A great study to do, because then you can identify the things that are actually burning you out throughout the day, and figure out how to get those off your plate.
I am with you on that. And I think all of this leads to building a meaningful vision for your life and for your business. And we talk about that. If you don't have that, you're in the drift. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think vision is the compass. It's the thing that lets you know, are you headed the right direction or not? I like to think of vision as the qualitative component of your life. Hey, if you could live a perfect day, a perfect week, a perfect month, a perfect year, what does that look like for you? What is not maximize, not borrowing someone else's vision, not like, hey, everything needs to be, I need this 50,000 person company and I want this 20,000 square foot mansion and 5 Ferraris and 2 yachts and all. It's like, no, that maybe that's meaningful for some people. For most people, it's not at all. It's more about how do you want to feel on a regular basis? What emotions do you want to feel? Who do you want to be spending your time with? How do you want to be living? Where do you want to be spending your time? What environment? Who do you want to be working with? What do you want to be working on? How do you want to play to your strengths? It's the qualitative stuff. It's what does the most happy, fulfilling, meaningful life look like for you? And now you have a clear picture of, hey, if like this sounds like a really great life, like that would be super impactful for me. These are the relationships I want to have. Here's how I want to feel. Here's what I want to be doing. It's not, oh, I want a 75-person company that does this much revenue and, this much profit. No, that comes next. So you start with the vision, you start with the qualitative, and then you can quantify it. You can say, okay, if that's the lifestyle I want, great. I'm an action-oriented person. How do I make that happen? Well, I need to know what the target is. So what does that cost? Okay, I want to travel the world. I want to go on 3 weeks of vacation a year. Great. How much is the average vacation going to cost you? Perfect. Document it. How much is that house going to cost you? How much are you paying for food and clothing and internet and your phone and taxes and all these things? Easily quantifiable. And now you have a goal for, hey, if that's the lifestyle I want to live, that's my vision, it's going to cost me this much, which means I need to figure out how to earn that much money. And now you have a reason behind goals you set for your business. You can say, hey, I want to have the business at this point, and it's not just some arbitrary number. People make up all these numbers. Oh, I want to earn 250,000 or 500,000, or I want $1 million or 10 million net worth or 20 million. It's like, okay, but when you generally ask them, it doesn't mean anything to them. It's sort of an arbitrary number. But if you go about this process of setting the vision, the qualitative, and then quantifying it, now there's a purpose behind it. Now there's a reason why that number is meaningful and why they're actually going to work towards it. Because what any entrepreneur will generally find is that it's too hard. It's too hard to keep going if you don't have a compelling reason to keep going. You will run into too many challenges. There are too many bumps in the road, too many obstacles, to where if you're just doing it for some unknown reason and you don't have a really compelling reason to keep going and do it, you're just going to stop. You're just not going to do it. That's why vision is so important. And getting the clarity of vision, I like to use the process of, the 5 whys. You ask, someone says, oh, I want this. And you, okay, why? And they say, oh, because, that would, like they say, oh, I want this car. And okay, why that car? Well, it would just be, really exciting. And, I love driving fast. Okay. And what do you like about driving fast? And well, they say, well, it's just, it's really fun. And okay. And tell me, more about like, why is that fun important to you? Well, I get a sense of freedom and, and it gets down to the feeling, ultimately the feeling that they're looking to have. And so they're looking for fun and excitement. It's like, okay, so you're looking for fun and excitement as that's part of your vision. Great. That's probably meaningful. Now you're hoping that this car will give you fun and excitement. Let's stress test that a little bit. Maybe it will. Maybe it's going to be, the literal ride of a lifetime and you're going to love it forever. And maybe that's perfect for you. Or maybe you're going to work your butt off for this super expensive car. It's going to be exciting for a month and then you're going to get bored of it. I don't know. But if you're looking for fun and excitement, are there other ways that we can meet that value without having to go and buy this thing that may or may not meet that goal? So stress testing, you mentioned stress testing, goals or an idea. Well, I think a vision should be stress tested as well. And a way that is successful to do that is you just keep asking why or meaningful questions, trying to get down to the purpose of something. And once you get down to the feeling of it, now you know if something really is purposeful or not.
I am always shocked at how few people do this. Like, once you know where you're going, it becomes real easy to get there. Most people spend most of their life not knowing where they're going and wonder why they didn't get there. Or they don't, as you said, understand the why. They think they want something because it looked good on Instagram. And when they get there, they're like, oh, this really sucks. Yeah, you should have tested it. It's funny when you hear the kids who want to be like doctors, and the first time they see someone getting blood drawn or see blood and they pass out, it's like, good thing you found that out before you went.
Right.
But those are the things that need to happen. And it's, you know, I keep telling people, and now they're hearing it from somebody else. So hopefully at some point, they'll actually take the time to sit down and create all of this stuff. It takes work, and it's not a one-day process. It takes months to put this thing together, and you just got to get it and go for it, and then continue to evolve it. This is not, I think a lot of people think these are stone tablets. They're not. They're just a editable document that is good for today, and then at some point tomorrow, you can change it if you find out something has changed or the world has changed or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You go for it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we should have talked about that we didn't get a chance to?
I mean, one other thing I would like to add on the vision side, because people often have a tough time with setting a vision, and they like don't know where to start. And I've found the easiest way is to start by just talking about it, not writing it. Because writing it takes too much time. It takes away a lot of the emotion out of it. Ultimately, the vision should be something that is emotionally compelling to you, it has feeling behind it. And so what I recommend people do is always to just record themselves, and you're having a conversation with somebody, and you're just talking about what a great life looks like to you. How do you want to feel? What do you want to be doing? Who do you want to be doing it with? What experiences do you want to have? What kind of work do you want to do? Who do you want to be helping? And now now it's just flowing. You're not thinking about it. You're not taking too much time to write it out. But that is a great place to start, because now you're letting your passion, your emotion come out. And then afterwards, then you take it and you start refining it and questioning it and what's meaningful and what's not. But I like to have people start that way, because then it starts with the emotion, and that's generally where you're trying to get to, the meaningful components of it. I find when people start by just listing off a million different things on a piece of paper, it's really easy to list things that don't mean anything to you. So I like starting with just the verbal part.
This is a perfect case study for AI. Like, this is where you just talk to AI and you go, hey, I want you to do this for me, and here's what we're going to do, and I'm going to start throwing this stuff out, and you just keep asking me why, and then put the whole thing in a document, and then let's work on it. It is like, we have such tools today that it amazes me. Like, people would, if I said that to somebody, they'd be like, AI can do that? I'm like, yeah, it can do everything. Just do it. Like, go.
Yeah.
Wild and crazy times.
Yeah. Incredible stuff.
What's one truth about success you wish more people understood?
It's on the other side of failure.
Nobody wants to hear that. You got to try, right? And when you try, you're going to fail. And, you know, it's funny when a kid learns to ride a bicycle and they fall down, they just laugh. And somehow we forgot to do that. What's a lesson that cost you a lot but was worth every penny?
Just go for it.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to, right? There are times where you just, what is that word? Something about procrastination, too much information, and you get stuck in it. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Never stop trying to find the things that really light you up.
And that's the key. When you're doing what's fun, you just keep doing it. It's not work. And you'll outshine everyone else, because to you, it's just fun to learn and grow and do all of that.
Yeah. And you'll stick with it.
And you'll stick with it, because it doesn't take energy. It makes energy. If people would like to learn more about you and find you, how can they do that?
Yeah. Our website, leaderos.co, or you can reach out to me on Instagram, and that is It's Dan Brault.
And we will put that in the show notes, and it is not how it sounds. So go look at the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Rocky.
Hey, thanks for checking out the full unedited video of the Richer Soul podcast. You can get the full audio podcast with intro, outro, and a ton more details here on YouTube or whatever your favorite podcast player is. Don't forget, we've got hundreds of episodes for you to go back through, and you can also get episode information on the Richer Soul website as well. Don't forget to subscribe so you're automatically updated as to what's going on and every time we release a new episode. The first few episodes of the Richer Soul podcast actually lay out the entire framework that everything is built on over all of these years. So check them out as well. Thanks for listening.